Welcome. This is Jeff Hicks. I'm your instructor for the Train Signal course, Windows PowerShell 3 Essentials. This is the lesson entitled Using PowerShell Help. In this lesson, we're going to take a look at PowerShell's help system. PowerShell has an incredibly rich ecosystem of help information that makes it much easier to discover how do I learn PowerShell, how do I use PowerShell. For example, you can discover very easily the syntax of PowerShell commandlets and scripts and functions. What are the details? How do I use these different parameters for these commandlets? Help includes typically some really real-world and practical examples that are explained in detail. So you see the command in action and you can understand what it is that command is doing. So with this help system, it becomes much easier to discover how do I learn PowerShell, how do I use it. The help system supports wildcards, so you can just basically ask for help, and as long as you have some idea about what it is you want to look for, put it in terms of a wildcard, like service star or star service star, and PowerShell will tell you everything that it knows about service. And the help system does support third-party vendors. You can write help for your PowerShell scripts and modules when you get to that point in your PowerShell experience. So the help system is not just for Microsoft, but for third-party vendors as well. So many of the things I'm going to show you can apply to companies such as Citrix or VMware that have PowerShell solutions. Their help products, their commandlets have help, and it works basically the same way. So we're going to use the get help commandlet. It has an alias of help. Actually, help is a function that kind of wraps up some functionality with get help that makes it a bit easier to use. Again, as I mentioned, you can use this with your own scripts and modules. It's not limited just to commandlets. The help is included on your computer, but you can also get the most up-to-date help as well as the most current help, if you will, by using an online switch. Now, the help has to be written in such a way that there's a link that's provided, and so your computer has to have internet access to access that link, but it is possible. A lot of the Microsoft commandlets that ship with PowerShell have online help available. Other vendors might as well. Now, one thing about PowerShell help, in my experience in working with version 3, is that even though you can run PowerShell version 2 side by side with version 3, some of the help files when you're in version 2 are actually showing you version 3 content. So you may need to make sure you pay close attention to that. There are a few situations where the help may not reflect what you can do in version 2, but hopefully you're going to be using version 3 most of the time anyway, and you're going to be looking at version 3 help. So I'm hoping that that's not going to be too much of a problem. And this is what it looks like. You can run help get service -full, and this will show you all of the information that PowerShell knows about get service. And you can see the synopsis and syntax and description. And I've got a more thorough demonstration I'll do here in a little bit. One of the new features that I really like in PowerShell version 3 is with help there's a -show window parameter. This will display basically the same help that you would see in the console in a graphical pop-up window. Now, there's a little bug in version 3, at least as I'm working on this lesson. There are providers that have help, and that help does not work with show window. Works fine in the console, but not with show window. I don't expect that to be much of an issue for anyone really. The help window that you get is searchable, it's customizable, so you can run a command like help get service -show window, and you get this nice pop-up graphical window, and you get your prompt back. So you can move this window around. If you have multiple monitors, you can drag it over to another monitor. Makes it much easier to search. You can customize whether you want to see just the synopsis or just the syntax, whether you want to see examples. Again, I'll have a more complete demonstration here in a moment, but -show window can come in very handy. In addition to commandlet help, PowerShell also ships with a large number of about topics. Now, these are really conceptual help topics. They're not necessarily about specific commands, but more about topics and how do I do something with PowerShell. You can search these with wildcards as well. Again, third-party tools and scripts, even things that you develop on your own, you can write your own about topics, and they're included, and you can find them with the help system just as well as anything else. For example, if you wanted to know about the switch construct, you can type help about underscore switch. All the about topics start with about underscore and then whatever it is. But you can use wildcards if you want to try to find something. So even if you only know a part of a name, like say I want to know about operators, you could do help about star operator star, and it will tell you everything it knows about operators. It would find all of them. So let's go into PowerShell. Let me walk you through so you get a feel for using the PowerShell help system. This is really one of the first things that you should do when you are using PowerShell, is to understand how to ask for help. So let's jump into PowerShell and take a look. Here in PowerShell, let me demonstrate how the PowerShell help system works. It's really quite simple. You just, in essence, just need to ask PowerShell, type help, and then whatever it is, just some word that you're looking for. For example, I want PowerShell to tell me everything it knows about services. So I can do help service. It will search, and then it shows me a list of commandlets and functions. You can use just a word like that, or you can also use wildcards. The wildcards gives you a little more information. You can see this also found an external script. You can experiment which way you want to work with that. But once you identify the commandlet you want, for example, get service, then we just ask for help. So we can do help get, oh, wrong commandlet. Notice there that the help system went to search. Even though I typed in the wrong commandlet name, the commandlet help was searched for by the help system, and it could not find it because there was a link for updated help, which I'm going to cover a little bit later, and it couldn't find it. So that shows you that the help system will work really hard to find what you need. Let's try this again. Let's do help get service. There we go. So that is the basic help that you get. You see the name, the synopsis, the syntax, which means in this particular case there are 3 different ways that we can use this commandlet. We'll get into all these commandlets much later. A description and then some related links. You can get a little more detailed. You can kind of turn up the volume, if you will. I can do help get service dash detailed. So it gives me basically the same information, but a little more information on parameters. And then examples. If you want to see everything, I can do help get service dash full. And this will show me everything that PowerShell knows about this particular commandlet. So here's the information on all the parameters. I can see whether it's required, if it takes pipeline input, if it accepts wildcard, and I get all of the examples as well. If you only want to see the examples, you can do help, the name of the command, and then dash examples. And that'll give you just the examples. Now PowerShell does not require you to type the complete commandlet name, and the complete parameter name. Actually, you can get by with just doing help get service dash ex and hit tab to tab complete it, or just dash ex and it will finish that out for you. So just ask PowerShell for help about what you want. And this also applies to aliases as well. So if I do help dir, that works just as well as help ls or help get child item, because they're all for the same commandlet and they will all work. The about topics I was telling you about, if I can do get help about star, I'll pipe that to more so it pages it. Here are all of the about topics that it finds on my system. You can see there are quite a few there. And again, these are more conceptual topics. So I can do help about underscore operators. And it gives me a little something to read, kind of like man pages in Unix. The help topics can also be found online. Now, they won't work for the about topics, but you can do a topic, a commandlet, I should say, like get process, and do -online, and this will open up a browser and go out to Microsoft and will show you the most up-to-date and current topic for this particular commandlet. And you also get then links to all the other commandlets too there. Down at the bottom, there is a place for people to add community editions. So I expect in version 2, there's a lot here. It looks like they've reset things for version 3. So you'll be able to find and add your own community content for a lot of these commandlets. Unfortunately, this does not work for the About topics, but once you're in here, you can search through PowerShell and find all the other online help topics. Here are the About help topics. So you can still find them online, but you have to browse. Actually, you got to get to the page before you can browse them. So that's working with the online version. Said it doesn't usually work, so I do help about remote. So there it is locally, but online it won't work because there's no URL associated with that file. And this is the same thing you would get with other help topics that may come from commandlets from other vendors. They may not necessarily have an online link. You can go ahead and give it a try, but if you don't get it, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's broken. Just may mean that the help author has not provided a link for online help. Now, what I really like in PowerShell version 3 is this show window. So I can do help. Let's look at the event log -show window. You notice my prompt comes back, and now what I get is also a resizable, and I can also zoom in, make the font a little bit bigger or smaller. I can search for some particular word, like example. It'll take me to it. Here are all the examples. Syntax should be pretty much everything that you see when you run get help or using the help command. In the prompt, you get the same thing here, but this is now a window that I can leave open. You can come here and you can customize what pieces of information you want to see. For example, if I don't want to see any of that, I can click OK, and that makes it go away. So I get rid of all the examples. One thing to be aware of, though, if you do that, that change will apply to all future commands as well that you use show window. So I typically don't do that. I leave everything checked so I can get everything that I need to see. This also works for the About topics. About _ switch, show window. All right, same type of thing works. What this won't work, though, is with providers. The providers like the file system, registry, whatnot, they all have help topics as well. So I do like help file system. I get some nice information here. But if I try this with show window, I get a bug. It does not display the actual help. This has been reported to Microsoft. Hopefully at some point it'll be fixed, but one little thing to be aware of there. So this help command that I've been using technically is a function so that you can run basically the same help commands. The real help commandlet is called get help. Which has these ways of you being able to narrow down help. But when you run get help by itself, it scrolls everything off the screen, which is definitely a problem when you're doing like full help. So the big thing that help does, let's use the alias -full, is it basically pipes it to more automatically, so you get it paged. So whether you use help or get help really doesn't make any difference. I typically use help, so I get that use of the more command. All right, there is a quick help demonstration. Let's go back to the slides and show you some other parts of the help system in PowerShell. Okay, so that was a look at using help in PowerShell. But you know, if you have a brand new PowerShell 3 installation and you try to run help, you probably won't see anything. except for maybe a bare bones description. And that's because PowerShell version 3 introduces this concept of updatable help. And it does this for a number of reasons. First off, on a server platform where you may not be typically interacting with that server in a PowerShell session, help files really aren't necessary. You're not going to be sitting on a server trying to do help get service. You're going to do that on your client and remotely manage the server. At least I hope that will be your plan. So I don't need help files. Not that there's necessarily any sort of security vector, attack vector through help files, but let's not put anything on the server that we don't really need, and help files would be one of those things. The other part of having updatable help is that PowerShell is part of the operating system. So when it comes to updating the help, and the help is stored under the System32 directory structure, going to update that is really difficult. There's a lot of hoops that people have to jump through at Microsoft. So if Microsoft needs to update the help, it's not easy to do. But by having this updatable help, they're able to overcome some of the technical limitations that they have in terms of updating PowerShell through the operating system. So PowerShell 3 ships with minimal help. Again, if you have a brand new PowerShell 3 installation, you'll see this if you try to run help, and it'll tell you, hey, you need to run update help. So PowerShell 3 lets you choose with this new update help command. You can update, what and when you want to update the help content. So you can say, I want to update it right now or update it tomorrow. You can decide what content to update. You can get update help that's available for all the modules or maybe for specific modules. And you can also decide where to update help. By default, you can download help from Microsoft, but I'm going to show you here in a moment where you can save help, and maybe you want to update help from a local source in your environment. So you don't have to have 100 machines all going out to Microsoft. You can get your help locally. So that's this concept of updatable help. So to use updatable help, the default is for all discovered modules. So if you just do update help, it will find all of the modules on your computer and then download all the updatable help that's available for those modules. Or you can specify a module or two if you are only interested in certain ones. This does require administrative privileges because it is the help files are typically stored under the System32 folder. So regular users can't usually update help. This does require admin privileges. And really all you have to do is just run update help, and PowerShell will go out and download all of the updatable help for all of the modules that it finds on your computer. However, there are a few limitations you need to be aware of. Obviously, this does require an internet connection. So if you had a server that is not publicly facing the internet, you can't update help. We'll show you that when we get to save help, how you can solve that problem. And again, it does require an administrative credential. That could be a limitation for some people. You can only use update help once a day. Now, you can get around that. You can use the -force, but by default, when you run update help, PowerShell will kind of make a note about when you ran that. So if you go to run it again, you really won't get anything unless you use -force. Obviously, the help content doesn't change that frequently, so running it more than once a day, unless you're trying to troubleshoot a problem or something, really shouldn't be necessary. Be aware that not all of the help files that you can get from Microsoft are localized. If you need to, if you're in a multi-cultural environment, you can use the en-us culture to make sure you try to download at least the English versions of the help files. This should not be much of an issue unless you are in a company that has administrators, say, running PowerShell in French or German or some other language. So not all help is localized, so just kind of keep that in mind. If you have snap-ins, and we'll cover snap-ins and modules and are covered separately in another lesson in the course, if you have snap-ins, typically those will not work with updatable help. The update help will only work for modules that are installed on your computer. And of course, not all modules, or even all the commands within those modules, support updatable help. They have to be written in such a way to support this updatable help feature. So if you don't have access to the internet from, say, a server, or you have a bunch of machines, you don't want them all going out to the internet, to Microsoft to download help, there is an alternative way. You can save help to a central location, say to a file share. Now you still have the same requirements and limitations as update help, because it's still going to get the latest help and it needs admin privileges only once a day. All those things still apply. But the big difference is when you're in update help, you're going out to Microsoft. With save help, you are specifying a location where you want to save the help. So what I typically do is create a Windows 8 machine with the remote server administration tools. This should give you all of the new modules that you might have in Windows Server 2012, which will be most likely to have updatable help. Then set up a scheduled PowerShell job to save help on that Windows 8 machine. Then go ahead and that command can just be running save help and specifying the destination. In this case, you can see on the screen there, saving that into a PS help folder, a shared folder on my file and print server in Chicago. Now I have the help for all of the modules that all my Windows 12 machines might need, but now they're saved locally in my network. So the next step becomes updating help from that source, from that local source. I'm going to use a commandlet, so you can use update help, and I'm going to specify the source path. Again, same requirements and limitations. Again, this only updates modules that are on my machine. So if I have another, let's say I have a Windows 7 box with PowerShell version 3, I can still do update help, but it's even though my source file may have help files for Windows 2012 modules and lots of other things, it's only going to update help for what it sees on my computer, but it'll use the files in that network share. In fact, I built a little set of PowerShell scripts, and this is documented in much more detail on the Petri website. I wrote a little article on building a PowerShell help update system. So if you follow that bit.ly link there, that'll take you there and you can learn a little bit more about that. So let's go back into PowerShell and let me show you this update help system and how it works. Okay, back in Windows 8 here, let's look at help real quickly for this update help commandlet. So let's do help, update help, and let's look at this in the shell window. So you can specify either a module, it'll do all of the modules, the source path, which we'll get to a little bit later. The default will be to wherever the location is that's specified in each of the individual commandlets. So for all the Microsoft stuff, it's going to go out to a Microsoft website and download all of the help. If you are in a multicultural environment and you need to make sure you get help, remember there's some help is not localized, you may need to specify that EN-US culture here. So once I know how to use that, I can just come here and do update help. Now I'm going to go ahead and use the -force parameter. Even though I don't think I've run this already in this computer, update help will typically only go out and download once in every 24-hour time frame unless you use -force. But this is what it looks like. So this is going to go out and it's searching right now on my computer for all of the modules installed. This computer happens to have the remote server administration tools, so I have all the Windows Server 2012 pieces as well. And it goes out, it downloads them. You can see the progress bar there. This will take a minute or so. Now when this is finished, you still may see some errors because not every module, even though it may be marked that it has updatable help, not every module has updatable help. It's not been added to the Microsoft website, or it is certainly possible that there may be a bug and that there's a typo. Those things may be kind of hard to troubleshoot. Best thing is just run update help like I'm doing here, wait for it to finish, and just kind of hope that most of it is updated. A lot of this help is updated relatively frequently if you are active in the PowerShell streams on Twitter, you'll usually see some tweets about new help contents available. You can go out and do updated help. So we'll go ahead and just let this finish here. It may take another minute or two. All right, that finished. What you can do, you can also, if you just want a specific module, you can do that as well. Let's look at this command here. Let's do get module, and let's look at all of the Microsoft PowerShell modules. So I've got those modules, and if I wanted to, I could just say, hey, just get those and do update help dash force. And then that would rerun update help and just get help just for those modules. I'm not going to go ahead and do that because we just really updated the help. Now what we can do, instead of updating it to and downloading it from Microsoft, we can save the help locally. If we look at help for save help, the main thing that we're going to specify here, it works very much like update help, except we're going to specify ideally a destination path. So I'm going to do save help, and my destination, I'm going to specify a folder, the shared folder on the file and print server in the Chicago office. So let's say that you're the Chicago admin, and what you want to do is you want to have your servers and all your desktops, people who are running Windows PowerShell version 3, you don't want them to go out to the internet all the time. You're going to set up a mechanism so that you download all the help that they might need once to this local folder. Go ahead and do force again. So that now is go out, we get the same sort of download progress bar. This will download all the help, and this is one of the reasons I have the RSAT installed, because I should have almost all of the help content that I might need on any of the servers in the Chicago office. If by chance there is some server that has a module installed that I do not have installed here, and he does update help specifying this local source, he won't get the updated help. You'll need to go out and download the help from the vendor, Microsoft or whoever that vendor might be. So there's still some little gotchas here we're trying to sort out as to what's the best way to download all of the available help that I might need on my systems. Because now what I could do on my other machines, I'll just demonstrate it here, is you could do update help and specify the source and then put in my Chicago FP01 PS help folder. And now this will go out. I'll go ahead and run it here. And this is going to go out, and now it's going to download the help from my local source. You can set this up as a scheduled task if you want it on your servers. There's some things you might be able to do with group policy, or look at that link that I provided on my PowerShell help system that I wrote about on the Petri knowledge base, and you can maybe kind of set up your own little internal system. So we can use update help to go out and get the most current help, and then use save help if you want to save it locally, and then use update help and specify the source pointing to that local location. There are some group policy settings as well you can look into so that you can tell people if they run update help that automatically will go to the path that you specify. All right, so there we go. There's a quick little look at working with local and updatable help. All right, so let's go back to the slides. I have one more thing I want to show you. All right then, the last thing I want to show you is, well, it's technically not a help command, but I kind of find it a helpful feature, if you will, so that's why I decided to add it to this lesson. PowerShell version 3 includes a new command called show command. And this is a really powerful tool, I think, for learning how to work with a PowerShell commandlet. What you'll get is a GUI-based tool that you launch from a PowerShell prompt, or it's integrated into the PowerShell IOC. the show command window that you get is, in essence, it's a wizard that you can use to create a PowerShell command. So if I ran, say, show command dir, you can use aliases or the commandlet name, you'll get the pop-up screen like you see there on the slide there, and I get this little form. So those are all the parameters. Instead of me trying to learn what the parameters are, I can go in, fill in the blanks, and I can either run the command, or I can copy it, paste it into a script, or see what it looks like from the command prompt without actually having to run it. So it's a nice way of kind of building a command, seeing how it works, but without having to struggle reading through the help and going back and forth and trying to understand, how do I make sense of this? I think this would be a big help to you. In fact, let's go back to PowerShell one more time, and let me show you how to work with show command, and I think you'll find it pretty interesting and hopefully very useful. Even though show command isn't technically a help topic or help tool, I think it is helpful in learning how to work with things in PowerShell. So the way that you can use it really is quite simple. We can do show command, and this only works for a single command. It's not something you would use to build a pipelined expression. Let's say I want to learn how to use the dir command, which is get child item, which you can see there. So you can just basically now have a wizard. You'll have different tabs for different syntax sets or parameter sets. We're just going to stick to this items. You can resize this if you need to be. You can make it a little bit bigger. You can, some of these, like these common parameters, which I'm not going to talk about right now. So let's say I want to do file. I'm not quite sure what that is, but let's do file, and let's do filter. Let's do star.xml. You can hover over, and you can see that this is expecting a string. It's optional. And for the path, let's do my S drive, and let's do recurse. Now, you can do a couple of things here. I can copy it. So if I open up something like Notepad, I can paste it, and there's the command that is going to get what I fill out in that little wizard. All of the files that have XML in path S recursively search. Hey, that looks pretty good. In fact, if I wanted to, I could go ahead, and I'm going to save that, and run it, and it will paste it into my window and go ahead and execute it. And then it exits show window. Now there is another way that you can use show window. There is a dash pass-through parameter. I'm going to do the same thing again. Let's do file, filter, star.xml, put in my path of S, and recurse. Now you see I only have OK and copy. Copy still works the same way like I just showed you. OK just pastes the prompt. Now it doesn't run it, but it just kind of puts it in there, so you could then go back and manually copy and paste it if you wanted to. So it's a way of seeing how that command might work. There's no guarantee that what you put in this command, in this wizard, will actually produce any valid results, but it is a nice way of experimenting to see system, force, directory. All right, so there, that brought some things up. Certainly there's an error there because we don't have access to document and settings. But it is a useful way. In fact, I'm going to break out of this because I chose that recurse, so it's going to search through the entire directory structure on my C drive, and I don't want that. So use show window as kind of a way to discover how commandlets work, play around with the different parameters and see. Once you understand that, then it becomes easier to type the command. But sometimes people aren't so fond of typing, and having that little GUI can be quite beneficial. All right, so there's a quick little look at show command. Let me go back and give you your homework for this lesson. Okay, so that kind of wraps up this lesson on working with the PowerShell help system. I have a couple short lab exercises for you to take on if you haven't done some of these things already. First off, go ahead on your computer and run update help. Make sure that you can get help updated. If you need to run it more than once, remember the -force. See if you can update help, but save it to a shared folder, or at least a folder on your computer. and then run update help again from that shared folder. Ideally, it'd be great if you could do it from another computer or update help again from your local computer. So see if you can update help and get in the habit of working and looking at help. So throughout the rest of this course, as I introduce new commandlets, one of the first things you should do, if I don't do it in my demonstration, is look at full help and examples for commandlets, for the things that I show you. Because I can't cover absolutely everything, so I'm going to trust that you will read the help and discover those little things that might still apply to you, that, oh, I can use that, even though Jeff didn't cover it. That kind of wraps up this lesson. I hope you found it useful. If not, go back and run through it again until you find it useful, because this is one of the most important things you need to know how to do in PowerShell is use help. So thank you very much for your time, and I'll catch you in the next lesson.